In this lesson right now, we're going to experiment with some diminished seventh chords. If you don't know a diminished seventh chord, I'll give you a quick theory overview. You have 12 notes in a chromatic scale in one octave. If you divide that into 4 equal parts, 12 divided by 4 is 3. So, see how it's every 3 frets? It's an equal interval chord, so any fingering that you have for a diminished seventh chord really constitutes 4 different diminished seventh chords. Any one of the notes could be the root. And every 3 frets, you'll be revoicing that, duplicating the exact same 4 notes. So you really only need a couple of fingerings and you're covered on your diminished seventh chords. Let me give you these fingerings because we're going to stick these in to create a little bit more harmonic motion. If you look at example 5, you will see that in the quick change measure, measure 2, instead of just playing a D7, we're going to go D7 and then D sharp diminished seventh. Now, look at this voicing. A minute ago I had you playing this D7 chord. Here's a standard 5th string root D7 chord derived from your A7 float chord. It's voiced 1, 5, flat 7, 3, 5. A real easy way to execute this change is to simply come down with your second finger, and that will give you the D sharp diminished seventh. We're going to be playing along with the track. Now we're going to stick this in measure 2 and also in measure 6. You can do either or both. This particular track has both of them. And notice that now we're changing on a 2-beat basis in measure 2. 2 beats of the 4/7, 2 beats of that sharp 4 diminished seventh. First thing I'm going to do is just play along, let you hear the bass line. We got 1, 4, sharp 4, back to 1. You hear that? Now measure 5 is a 4, measure 6. You hear that? Now let's play along with it with the chords. Now, we're mixing and matching. Let me give you the exact changes for this. You're going to have all these written out in terms of the chart, but we're mixing and matching with some of these jam tracks. Now, on the jam tracks, you're going to have the chart also, but let's go through this slowly. We played A7, which was the 1 chord. That was all of the first measure. The second measure, we played the 4/7, which is D7 for 2 beats. Then we played D sharp diminished 7th, a passing chord, which wants to resolve back to the A7. That was on beats 3 and 4. Back to A7 for measures 3 and 4. Then, measure 5, we're on our standard 4 chord, the D7. Measure 6, we hit the D sharp diminished 7th, back to the A7 for measures 7 and 8. Measure 9, we hit our 5 chord. Measure 10, we hit our 4 chord. Measure 11, back to the 1. And measure 12, we hit the 5 to get it started all over again. That was that particular example. Now, look at example 6. You have a new thing getting included, which is going to have a jazzy sound. If you look at the chart, measure 4, you see a 1/7, and then you see ALT. That's an abbreviation for altered. Now, an altered dominant chord means the 5th and or the 9th have been sharped or flatted. Any combination of those. Let's go back to this A7 chord that you learned previously. You had the root, the flat 7 to 3, and there was your 5. So if we need an A7 sharp 5, what are you going to do? You're going to raise that 5 a half step. Now what this does, it creates tension right there in measure 4 before you resolve to the 5, or rather the 5th measure, which is the 4 chord. Now don't let me get you confused on this numbers. Remember when we introduced the 5 chord in measure 12, and I told you that the 5/1 motion is the strongest motion that occurs in music. Well, that's exactly what's happening here. Think of the roots of these chords. Here we have A, 2nd measure, 3rd measure, 4th measure. Now in measure 5 we go to D. Follow me on this. In the key of D, A is the 5th note. So if you view measures 4 and 5, you could think of it as a 5/1 motion in the bass line because A is the 5th of D. It wants to propel to that D note. Dominant chords, which are altered, are really strong ramps. They have all this tension and they require some resolution. Now all these other chords that I'm going through, we may or may not get around to learning them. I'll try and get some time to show you here if I have time. But I'm going A7 sharp 5. That's the choice I'm going to play at first in measure 4 of example 6. That takes care of a lot of tension when you're resolving back to D9, D7, or D7, different voicings like that, D13. Now we could also add another altered tone up on top. We could play A7 sharp 5, flat 9. Notice how I'm hyperextending my little finger, then I can just come right down to the D9. If you look at this, the top 4 voices just come down chromatically. You could even put a sharp 9 on top of that sharp 5. And so we get into a pretty deep realm here. I better slow down because I'm going to run out of time. But this is what we're going to use. And by the way, you wouldn't hear that if you were just playing your root and your guide tones, would you? Because now these other voices that we're adding are what color the sound. Let's play along with the track. And before we do, I better explain what happens over in measures 9 and 10. Measure 10 is our 5 chord. So we're going to precede it with a 2 minor 7. That would be the B minor 7. Again, we've got a real strong motion of bass lines resolving down a fifth. Let me demonstrate this. I don't have a jam track yet for this because we've got some other things we're going to add to it before we play along with the jam track. 1. A7 altered, down to the D9, back to the A7. Now your B minor 7, which is the 2, and then the E7, the 5. See how that worked? Now I stuck in something on the end. I put in a 5-7 altered. The 5 chord can always be altered. We don't have that written in the chart very well, but you need to just know that right away. And one of the reasons why it can be altered, if you look at the tones you have available, this is an E7 sharp 9 sharp 5. If you take your first finger away, the 4 notes that you're left with come right out of your minor pentatonic scale. So that's a quick, easy way to remember that you can put all kind of altered dominants on that 5 chord. Now in the next section, we're going to talk about some more progressions. We're going to build on what we've just done because you notice how it's starting to sound a little jazzier.